Welcome back everyone for Retro Restore, where we're going to be taking apart this 32X and making sure it's all nice and clean before we put it inside our Sega Genesis. So as far as the outside of this one, I mean, it is a little crusty. You can kind of see that in the reflections on there. Looks like there's a little bit of damage on here possibly, or at least some corrosion. On that side, it's a little crusty too. That's weird because that label is like pristine condition. Well, no more wasting time. Time to take this thing apart. When you're taking apart any electronics, make sure you are grounded out. So we're going to start by undoing these 4 Phillips screws in here. Okay, and with the screws out, just kind of tilt it up like this and pull it apart. Definitely made these pretty easy to take care of. We will start with the top here. What we're going to do is use the Phillips screwdriver again to take out these 3 screws, because this has kind of an odor to it. A lot of this was just like when I bought it from the guy, it was kept in storage, so it has a whole bunch of like musty odor. Some things had water damage from like storage leaks and everything, which can be a common problem when you're getting retro stuff, that it's just been sitting in storage with a bunch of humidity and all sorts of stuff around it for a while. Okay, so we got those 3 screws popped out, and then this just lifts right up. Now, unlike the Super Nintendo, this one, the spring assembly is attached directly to this. So with removing it, you remove the whole spring assembly too. So then what we'll do is start by cleaning these top components with Clorox wipes to get rid of the musty odor and make them lemony fresh. So both these parts are wet. We're going to set them to the side so they can dry. The only other consideration you may want to look at, if these vents are all dirty and everything, you may want to get some sort of tool to get everything scraped out of there. So this is where it gets a bit more fun. We want to get that metal shield removed so we can get in there and take more components out to do a nice cleaning of this plastic. So we have a screw here, we have 2 screws over here, we have 2 screws down here, then over here we have 2 screws, and then this side we have 2 screws, then we have 1 screw up here. So they screwed this up pretty well. Sure, I'm going to get a downvote for that. Okay, we have all the screws off the metal shield here. Now, one thing to note about the screws, the ones for this shield and the ones that were the 3 screws that were taken out in the top part of the shell, those are all the same, so they can all commingle with each other. But let's go ahead and take the shield off. See, right around there, if you can see that, that's kind of stuff we definitely need to get out of here, where it's like some sort of hair or fur or fuzz or something got in there. Have to make sure all that kind of stuff's out of this, just so it doesn't short out. So the next thing we'll do is undo these 2 screws around this connector. Then after undoing those 2 screws, this little metal shield around the connectors can come up. The note with these are extra long screws, so you can't really mix them up with anything. Be pretty tough, unless you're me, and then I'm sure I'll screw something up with that. Then you want to be really careful with this next part. These ribbons, you need to gently pull them out of their connectors. Got the first one out, and the second one's out. Then to finish being able to remove everything, there's this screw here, this one here, and then since you can move that connector a little bit, you can get to that screw now. And those screws were all the same as all the other ones in here, except for the 2 that go on this. So now with everything undone, grab by the connector and lift up. And this whole assembly will come out too. We'll just kind of set this to the side. And then on the bottom, we just have this part that goes underneath the connector and the metal tray. So now with all that removed, we will Clorox wipe this bottom part. Once again, if there's any crust in these vents, make sure that you get a tool to get those cleaned out. And then also, if you are Clorox wiping the outer part, make sure you do not get the label. We have that wiped out pretty well. We're going to set it to the side now. Then may as well, while we have this out, get that wiped off too, the Clorox wipe. These metal shields don't really look that bad. I'm not actually going to worry about getting these ones cleaned up, because these are stains on them. It's not anything that's going to be able to be removed. As for this part, what we will do is start by using our can of air, which makes sure if you're using one of these, it's in a well-ventilated area. And be sure to get the connector really well with this. So then the next fun part, we need to look inside this, and we also need to get these pins cleaned off pretty well. So using a small Phillips screwdriver, you can actually pop those 2 screws out. Those are such tiny screws, you don't even need to worry if they get mixed up with other ones, you will be able to find them easily. And then the shell will just pop right off. And each side of that shell has its own little shield on it too. But before we go anywhere else, we are going to get these shields off here and then Clorox wipe off these plastic components. And you don't need to worry about mixing these up because they're kind of notched in to fit in the correct shell. And they just easily lift up. And that finishes getting all of our plastic components Clorox wiped. What we're going to want to do is take our 91% isopropyl alcohol and get these connectors cleaned off pretty well. See if we can get any of that gunk off of them. You'll just take it on a Q-tip and try to remove any gunk that might be on the connector. So it's that kind of gunk is what I'm talking about. Nice coloring on the Q-tip there. I mean, those sections have some issues, but they look like they're pretty good now. So we'll set them aside so they can finish drying off. So the board on this side has some kind of gunk in there. I think what we're going to do is get this part of the board cleaned up some and replace the Captain tape that's on there. May as well do the same for these other spots too. So we'll go ahead and get this tape removed over here. That tape was still very sticky. And then get the board cleaned up over here with our isopropyl alcohol and Q-tips. Okay, just got some clean Captain tape on there. Just don't really like how that spot looks, so definitely going to get these other 2 up and clean under them too. Okay, we got that one clean and our new piece applied there. For those of you unfamiliar with Captain tape, pretty much all it is just prevents, like if they have the metal shields touching that, it prevents any chance of it shorting out. Then we'll remove this last piece here. And with that removed, we will just get this cleaned up a little bit. Well, whatever that gunk was, we got it all cleaned off. And there we go, that piece is applied now. This piece on the front looks okay. So I think now we are on to getting these connectors cleaned. We'll use our trusty eraser to go over this. You just have to be careful. There is a little bit of movement in this when you're going back and forth. That's the reason I wanted those other connectors disconnected from there. Then we'll get the other side with our eraser. And then our isopropyl alcohol on Q-tips we use on these pins. Now there are other things you can use. There are different chemicals like, is it deoxit, something like that you can get. But I'm just cheap. Eraser seems to work pretty well for getting a bunch of the gunk off of there. And then we clean the other side. Okay, then as far as everything else is concerned, it is looking pretty good. We are going to put this beast back together. We'll start with our front and back for this bottom part here. You line up this metal part where the opening is on there. Fits right on in. Then do the same for the other one. And then looking at the board, the easiest way to tell which part's the front, which one's the back on there, is there's this little notch over here. So where that notch is, that's where the notch for these goes. So we have that part fit in place at the notch. Then that piece slides over the top, and then you put those little screws back in. Then with our screws back in, everything is looking pretty good right there. Then grab the bottom shell, which the bottom one will have the label on it. Then as far as the metal shells, the only one that will fit in here is the correct one for it. Because the other one's just all weird shaped and everything, so you don't even have to worry about accidentally trying to put the wrong shell in there. Then you take your little plastic part that goes under where the pin connector will be, and this part goes down, the one where it has the opening that will slide on top of those 2 pieces. And then once that's in there, you can take our big assembly here and slide that down into the opening. And it is going to latch on little plastic parts that stick up all across here. Then the first thing to do is put the 4 screws back in to hold the bottom part in place, which this one here, this one back behind this, and then these 2 big openings. And luckily all of these screws are the exact same as all the other ones from inside. Then with those screws back in, it's safe to go ahead and put these ribbons back in place because we're not going to be twisting anything around anymore. Just make sure you gently get them applied back in there. Then we'll take our shield for the pin connector, and there are these 4 holes around here. This gets aligned where these will go inside each of the holes. And then when that's in place, the 2 longest screws, put those back in place too. And then the final part for this section is to get the shield back in place. So everything will be sticking up away from the board, and there will be this opening in the back for where these are. Then it just slides right on there. And it will align with all those same little plastic pieces that stick up. And then you put all 10 of the screws back in. And then with all of our screws put back in, we can just kind of put this to the side and get the top ready. So for the top, we have our game slot, and we have that. This will only fit in there one way. These 2 screw spots in the back and 1 over here line up with these 2 screw spots and 1 over here. And then we just put in our last 3 screws for inside the case. And then with that put back in place, make sure this works. Make sure to like and subscribe. And then we put this back together. So the 32X part will be on the opposite side of where the connectors go. You slide that on top, flip it over, and put those 4 screws back in. Our 4 remaining screws. There we have it, our nice clean 32X. And now to get it hooked up and see if it works. So if you're unfamiliar with how 32X hooks up in a Genesis, it's actually kind of interesting. So 32X has the AV out, AV in, and then the power adapter. So you take 32X and push it down into place like it's a cartridge. Unplug the video cable from the Genesis and plug that into the out for the 32X. Then you have a special adapter cable where you plug it into the out of the Genesis and into the in of the 32X. And the 32X uses the same power adapter the Genesis uses, so you'll just need an extra one of those if you don't already have one. And then once all that is connected up, take a 32X game and plop it into the top. So you have a nice stack here. Just need a Sega CD under this, and you'll have like the full Sega stack. And this game right here, it's actually going to be in the next video that comes out, which was recorded before this one, but it's going to be the next one. We'll be taking apart a 32X game and getting it all cleaned up. But now the moment you've all been waiting for. Let's see if this works. Well, it looks like things are working. That's a thing. It has been forever since I've played these kinds of games. I mainly platformers and RPGs. But I think I'm going to have fun with this one. So anyways, if you enjoyed this, if it was helpful for you, then please subscribe, leave a thumbs up, leave a comment, any of that kind of fun stuff. If there are any other types of systems or games that we have not done yet that you're wanting to see, then please let me know in the comments. We have a few more from this deal that still need to be fixed up. One of them including a Game Boy Pocket and a Game Boy Advance, which those will be coming in later videos. So, and thank you for watching. Have a nice day.